For the second time in 6 months, we are set to have a Masters out at Augusta National. It's going to be an interesting one for sure because we have a lot of recent data. We've got some big studs at the course for sure. Should be an interesting week of golf out at Augusta. We're going to break things down from a DFS perspective and get you set for the Masters here from a DFS perspective. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sadas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gdula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, back at Augusta. How are you doing today?
Good. It's a weird situation where we have, like you said, we just had the Masters in November. Now we're having it again. And there's probably going to be a lot of talk about how much stock do you put into the Masters when it was played in November, but also so recently. So I think that there's a lot of ways we can go with this, but ultimately, look, it's a major. It's the Masters. We got every one of the best golfers in this field, and like a lot of the analysis is going to come down to splitting hairs between the best golfers in the world, trying to figure out where the popularity is going to be on FanDuel, try to differentiate. And so just as a preface, it's probably going to be frustrating to listen to, but I'm going to be very hesitant because I'm going to say these are my favorite process plays, but I also think they're going to be the most popular. So therefore, I don't even want to, I'm probably not going to build around my favorite process plays all the time. So it's going to be a matter of differentiating, balancing between, being super chalky because, look, I mean, we got Jordan Spieth coming in great form, off a win, back at Augusta. And for that reason, I mean, this thing is just like the Spieth train is just unstoppable right now. And we have Dustin Johnson, not quite on the top of his form, but did run away with this thing. Not run away, but, looks like we lost Jim for a second, so I'm just trying to ramble here. But Dustin Johnson coming off the win in November. Bryson DeChambeau, very disappointing in November, but if you want to talk who should do well here, Bryson fits that. He and DJ are both 9.5 to 1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. So, I mean, you kind of have like those three sort of clear favorites, Spieth 11 to 1, Justin Thomas also 11 to 1, and then Jon Rahm 12 to 1, rounding out the top five. And so, I mean, just between those five, you're really splitting, between just some amazing plays. And for me, I think the most interesting name on that list, somehow not Bryson, not Spieth, not DJ, but actually kind of Jon Rahm, because he went on record saying that he would withdraw. He would withdraw if his wife went into labor during the Masters. So I was a little bit hesitant to buy in, but she gave birth. So,
congratulations.
Now you got to balance
the Roms.
It's not like, is Rahm going to withdraw? It's now, is Rahm going to sleep? Like, what's that situation where where's his thought process? Cause he's amazing at Augusta. It's just a matter of time before he breaks through, gets himself a green jacket. But I mean, like I said, spoiler alert, there are better process plays. There are better game theory plays from a daily fantasy standpoint. So it's just kind of what you get with the Masters each and every year.
Yeah, I think that what you're overlooking is that it doesn't matter how much sleep he gets. The fact that he is a new father automatically guarantees that Jon Rahm wins this event. Like he could not sleep from the baby's birth until Sunday, and he'd win by 6 strokes. Like we should not overlook that fact. And it is a fact. It's not a narrative, not an extrapolation. That's just the way things work.
I mean, those are your words. I like Jon Rahm, but in my analysis, which I did actually at the tail end of last week, that status was uncertain. So for me, like I was a little bit hesitant on Rahm. And I was like, okay, cool. If there's a risk that he'll just withdraw, then that takes one name out of contention that I have to kind of, decide between. that's no longer the case. So, I mean, I think for me, like it somehow feels like DJ, Bryson, or Spieth are just going to win it, but it also is so wide open that like I can't really, figure it out.
Yeah, so we're going to break things down here from a DFS perspective and let you know where we're looking for this week, our favorite plays in each tier. And as Brandon mentioned, it might not be the best process plays always because game theory does matter a lot for PGA DFS. Let's start things off here by taking a look at Augusta National. It's 7,475 yards and a par 72. 89 golfers are in the field. And as always, different cut rules for the Masters versus for other events. The top 50 plus ties will play into the weekend. As with November, it's a different cut rule than previous Masters where the 10-shot rule, where if you're within 10 shots of the leader at the end of those first two rounds, you made the cut previously. That no longer is the case. So that is gone. It's now just whoever are the top 50 golfers plus ties after the first two rounds will advance into the weekend. So, Brandon, we have a lot of data from Augusta, obviously not shot length data, but we know what types of golfers tend to excel here. We have a good grasp for what to expect at Augusta. When we look into that data, what do you see as being the most significant thing here?
I mean, look, I already said, we got the best in the world here. It's a major, it's the Masters. So we typically see the best golfers just float to the top. We'll see some outliers, like we saw Cam Smith, Sung J M finish runner up. That's not to say they're great golfers, obviously, but they're not, it's not necessarily the top five, on the odds board finishing top five. It's not, that set in stone, but, overall, we don't see many golfers and for our purposes, you don't see a lot of value golfers just pop here. It's not really the way that it works. It's not how the field is set up. And so statistically, kind of the reason for that is because every stat here matters, aside from one, which I'll get into in just a second. But according to Data Golf, driving distance, stroke gain approach, stroke gain around the green, and stroke gain putting all rate out more important at Augusta than your average PGA Tour course. That leaves just driving accuracy among those five sort of primary stats as less important than the field average for this week. So that's why Jordan Spieth sets up well at Augusta typically. And even now you can say his one big red flag is driving accuracy, but that's not super important this week. So ball striking, which is strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, that would basically be ball striking, that those full swings. Driving distance specifically, those make, it makes a lot of sense to prioritize those types of stats for this week. And it's common knowledge that first timers don't fare particularly well at Augusta. And so this is really one of the few weeks, this might be the only week actually, where I factor in course history as a key stat. I kind of weight it in the model, but I don't weight it too much because event history is and can be very, very misleading. If you're looking back 10 years, how relevant is that? Phil Mickelson's going to look good at Augusta. Is that something that you want to use this week to play Phil?
Right.
Joaquin Niemann jumps to mind. He has one event here, 2 rounds as an amateur in 2018, missed the cut. Joaquin Niemann now in 2021 compared to Joaquin Niemann as an amateur in 2018, extremely different golfers. He has played it. So how does that kind of factor in? But course history is at least on the list. So my key stats are kind of basic: strokes gain approach, driving distance, strokes gain putting, and course history for this week.
So I do want to ask you again about the course history stuff. Do you care about where people finish, how they perform, or is it just about have they played this course, have they seen Augusta previously?
It's kind of a little of both. I do have rounds, just sheer rounds here, but also strokes gained total at Augusta, trying to figure out who does well, who's played here a lot. I'm cool with someone who's played here a lot, maybe didn't fare well, but is in really good form right now. But I really never will take someone who's in terrible current form, who's missing a bunch of cuts, just has bad data, who happens to play well here historically or played well here, 4 years ago and like earlier, but has since been not particularly good. So, I plan on seeing like course history be discussed a lot this week. Just be careful with, how much you factor that in, because you'll easily penalize golfers for just either not playing it enough, not playing it well, and for us, current form wins out over course form 10 times out of 10.
I think the one thing that does help us there is that the course form is not as outdated as usually is, because they were just here back in November. So the relative form might be okay. So I think that does help for sure. We're going to talk about golfers who have done well here in the past in just 1 second, including Jordan Spieth. But first, Green Jackets, Magnolia Lane, the granddaddy of them all. Golf fans, get ready. It's almost time for the 2021 Masters Tournament. For only $15, you can take a shot at competing for a part of the massive $1 million prize pool, with first place taking home $200,000. Head over to FanDuel and set your fantasy lineup for this year's Masters Tournament. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's take a look here at Jordan Spieth, because I think he's not the favorite, but he is the headliner from a buzz perspective for this week. Brandon, you're talking about Jordan Spieth specifically at Augusta. How do you balance that with what you've seen from Spieth recently?
So I penciled in Jordan Spieth in this past history section when we set up the sheet last week. I debated flipping it to current form after he won the Valero Texas Open, but you can't really go wrong with Spieth in either section. And this way, we get to talk about Jordan Spieth at the top of the show. He's returning to Augusta, where he has a win in 2015. That win was bookended by a T2 on either side. It's 2014, 2016, and then was third place in 2018. So lots of very good results for Jordan Spieth at Augusta, which we all pretty much know. Augusta, kind of his course. But that's 4 top 3 finishes in 7 starts, with 7 made cuts, 6 top 25s. And really, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone with better form at Augusta than Spieth. And now you might be hard-pressed to find anyone with better recent form, compared to Jordan Spieth. Spieth ranks 5th over the past 3 months, according to Data Golf, their true strokes gained data, which is adjusted for field strength. He's doing it with elite iron play and an elite short game, which is what Jordan Spieth at his peak really does. The negative in his game is the driver. In terms of overall strokes gained off the tee, it's actually kind of neutral. But the reason for that is that he struggles finding fairways, which is, again, the main stat that we can ignore out of like the 5 sort of, overall stats. The 2 with the driver, so distance and accuracy, the iron play, so strokes gained approach, around the green and putting. Of those 5, accuracy is least important at Augusta. That's what Spieth struggles with. Everything else he's doing quite well. Even distance-wise, people kind of knock Spieth for being short. He's not particularly short. He's not long. He's not particularly long at all, but he's not short. So that is a key differentiation to make. So everything's lining up for Jordan Spieth. And his salary is $10,900 on FanDuel, which is very, very affordable. If you look back through what he's been doing in the super recent starts, this is according to Fantasy National, but at his win at the Valero, he gained 12.9 strokes tee to green, gained 0.9 off the tee, which is not a ton, but gained 7.4 from approach, 4.5 around the green, which is an outlier for sure, 5.7 on the greens. But the weeks before that, the starts before that in terms of approach, so again, 7.4 at the Valero, 6.2 at the Players, 5.5 at the Arnold Palmer, lost 0.8 at the Genesis at Riviera, gained 4 at the AT&T Pro-Am over, I guess that'd be two measured rounds, and then gained 7.8 at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. So the irons are on point for Spieth. We know He plays Augusta super great, and we know that he can putt as well as anyone. So I think Jordan Spieth is going to be, I would say, the most popular golfer, kind of breaking from the trend of the favorite and the highest salary golfer being the most popular. I was wrong on that. I was under the assumption that Jordan Spieth would be the chalk last week at the Valero. He was not. It was Tony Finau. So that was a bad read on my part, but everything I saw, suggested that it would be Spieth. I think Spieth is possibly, one of the most popular golfers at in these recent Masters that we've seen the past few years. So I think Spieth makes a lot of sense from a process play because he was injured. He's no longer injured, and he's doing what Spieth used to do historically. So you can't really use a long-term sample on Spieth, but I think process-wise, he's very deserving of that salary. I don't think we're jumping the gun. I don't think his wins are fluky. The iron play is almost, I won't say unmatched, but it's up there. So, Spieth's going to be the talking point of the week, but I really don't see any reason in the data to fade Jordan Spieth. So what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I agree. There's no reason in the data to be out on Jordan Spieth. It's just a question of, do you use him as a chalk? I know that, like you said, we were off last week. We thought he'd be the chalk last week. He didn't wind up being that, but I would assume he's got to be this week, right? Something would have to go absurdly wrong for that to not be the case, right?
I think so. Coming off the win, that was the one. If he was lukewarm or missed the cut, I'd be okay, that'll at least pump the brakes on the train. He won. I think it's just full steam ahead for Spieth in terms of his popularity. And again, I think it's justified. So I think process wise, he's a good play. But if he's on 35% of lineups, which is roughly where we'd see for the most popular golfer in a field like this, it's not going to be 40-45%. But he's not even remotely close to that to win. He's not going to be close to that to finish top 10. So from that process, you say fade him, but there are other ways to differentiate. One golfer who's in the single digits in terms of popularity, in terms of draft percentage on FanDuel, you differentiate your lineup a ton. So I'm not going to say you have to fade any particular golfer this week. Just be mindful if you're playing Spieth and you're playing him heavily, what you do with the rest of your lineup.
Right. I think that's the key is you can use Spieth, just make sure you are finding ways to be different elsewhere if you do decide to use Spieth. So using him fine, I think that I think that we're at the point of Jordan Spieth where even if you don't want to go even way with the field on him, I think it's one of those situations where I'd still be okay having some, but being underweight. I think that he's good enough and he's playing well enough, and the numbers you look at are good enough there even to justify using him. So I would say he's more of a player on whom you go underweight rather than full fading. Are you kind of in that same boat?
Yeah, most likely. Just because this isn't the Valero, this is the Masters. So every time we talk about a major, we talk about it's so easy just to pivot to someone else who's every bit as good and who is at half the popularity of a particular golfer. And we have so many opportunities to do that this week that I will be most likely underweight on Spieth. But, oh man, if he gets it going on Thursday, it's going to be a wild weekend.
And the good hedge is that even if he does get going on Thursday, it's going to be fun for Twitter. So sure, you might be underweight it for DFS, but at least you can still get other forms of joy there for sure. Let's talk about Cameron Smith. Now, Cameron, not the Cameron we think about when we think about distance, but he still has been really good at Augusta. And Smith has played Augusta 4 separate times. He's made the cut all 4 of those times, but importantly, he has 2 top 5 finishes. He was 5th in 2018. Then back in November, he finished 2nd. Shot 60 or lower. Not 60 or lower. He shot in the 60s. He somehow didn't win. That's how good DJ was. He shot in the 60s all 4 rounds, but didn't win because that's how good DJ was. And the distance for Cam Smith isn't there, but he does rank 23rd in approach, 13th around the green, 15th on bent grass. And so the short game is very good. The approach is good. It's not a bomber. And the issue that I run into So there are other guys in a similar archetype to Cam Smith, where they don't have great distance, but solid overall games, who are also in this range who I feel better about the overall component than I do with Cameron Smith. So if I'm going to take a run at someone who's not going to be able to hang from a distance perspective, I feel like I'd likely wind up going elsewhere instead of going with Cameron Smith. So I think he makes sense, but he's not my favorite in this tier or in this archetype. How does Cam Smith measure up for you, Brandon?
I like Cam Smith. It seems as though whenever he needs distance, he can sort of find it. He doesn't particularly gain distance, but he doesn't lose a ton either. He's also not like super accurate, which is the bigger concern generally. But again, injecting that type of data, that kind of driving into Augusta, it's not that worrisome. And he has such a good short game. He's so good around the green. He can be so good on the green that it makes sense as to why he can get it done at Augusta. Again, the 2 top 5s, the other 2 finishes outside the top 50. So it's not like he's flawless, but the form he's in currently is just, it's hard to compare, what he's done, 4 years ago to sort of what he is now. So I like Cam Smith. He is one of my favorites in this range. But again, for anyone who doesn't listen to our show often, I like balanced lineups a lot. It's a very easy week to like a balanced lineup, but you can't really build lineups without some of the studs. So, I'll have a lot of exposure to these guys right around 10,000. Smith will be at or near the top of the list for me.
Okay, so you like him. It sounds like, and this is not apples to apples salary, but it's pretty close. But do you like him more than Webb Simpson and Matthew Fitzpatrick, the other 2 guys who have really good all-around games but aren't super long off the tee?
More than Fitzpatrick, probably.
Okay.
What's Webb is?
Webb's 10-5. Yeah.
I mean, I like Webb. I think Webb is probably the best player. If you took him to a course where there were no drivers, he'd probably be the best player. Or I guess maybe just a super short course either way. But he has that ability. He doesn't typically get it done at Augusta to the degree where I feel like he's gonna thrive. So I guess salary considered, I would put Smith number 1 out of those 3.
Okay, fair enough. So let's move now to Lee Westwood, $9,700. And we've talked about Westwood in the current form section recently. Westwood also fits here with the Masters form. So what do you see with him in the past? And I think the most recent data for Westwood at Augusta might not be as relevant because it seems like his form now is a lot better than it would have been in April of 2019 or whatever.
Yeah, so Westwood has been talked up a lot, and I think he'll be interesting this week because the two runner-ups or runners-up recently should get his name toward the top of a lot of lists of what you see, and I think that he's just a very intriguing golfer to dig into at a salary of $9,700. And we can talk about the recent winners, but people generally know who's won here. I think the more interesting course form guys at a certain point become who has top 10s, who kind of makes cuts here, who's not at the top of the salary pool, something like that. And Westwood kind of fits. Lots of near wins across majors, including 2 runners up at Augusta, 4 more top 3s across the other 4 majors. But I think again, what makes him worthy of weirdly the recent form is why I think Lee Westwood is relevant here. If I saw just the course form and Lee Westwood was not really doing what he's doing, I wouldn't have interest. But runner-up at both the Arnold Palmer Invitational and the Players by gaining 14.2 and 13.5 strokes on the field in those, which are, of course, elite rates, which is what you have to do to finish runner-up. But missed the cut at the Honda, losing 5.9 strokes to the field. Went 2-1-0 at the WGC match play. Lost to Sergio Garcia in a playoff because Serge just aced. He dunked one. But Westwood's been kind of knocking on the door lately, and that's not to say he's trending toward a win this week. That's not what I'm getting at. But I think that a lot of people have interest in him, and I think it kind of makes sense. 38th at Augusta back in November, but I think he wouldn't really be at the top of my list because I want data that is that spans a longer time frame than just like the past 2 months, which is kind of what we're seeing with Westwood. So does he jump out to you at all, or is he not really someone who's on your radar?
Well, I think that he makes sense, but the problem is that there are guys around him who make more sense, if that makes sense in itself. So he just kind of falls victim to the fact that he's in a really good tier. You've got Paul Casey at 99, who we'll talk about in just a bit. Cameron Smith's 99 as well. I don't know how you feel about Sungjae, but he's 10,000. Scotty Scheffler's 10,000. Adam Scott, 96. There are a lot of guys. Joaquin Niemann is 96 too. So there are a lot of guys in this range who measure up really well, who have it's weird to say with Lee Westwood, but they have longer term, really good data behind them. And by past 50 rounds, whereas Westwood doesn't really have that. So I think that it's encouraging to see what he's done recently. I think it's fun to see him near the top of the leaderboard. It's a good storyline for sure. But I think that I just happen to like a lot of guys in that range more. So while I agree with you where I do want to go with a more balanced approach, which means I'll be here pretty often, I don't know if being here often will be enough to get me to Westwood.
Yeah, I think that I would rank him toward the lower end of this tier, which has not so much to do about him as it does just liking other golfers more. And I'm not going to chase the two runners up with Westwood.
Are you an RBI or an RBIs guy?
I'm not a baseball guy. So
no, but this is pertinent because the runner up versus runners up.
Is that? I don't know if that's actually comparable, but I would probably say RBI
because to me, an RBI is a singular unit and a runner up is a singular unit. So it could be runner ups. If you make them a singular unit, it'd be runner ups.
Yeah, I mean, right? If you change what,
because you say top fives, you don't say tops fives. Or anything like that.
I don't think
no, it's totally 1-to-1. I win this argument. I've done it. I've settled the RBI debate. Congratulations, Jim. Let's talk about Bubba Watson, two-time Masters champion in the same range as Westwood, $9,500. And Bubba was golfing well not that long ago, which makes him worth discussion here in this pretty good range. The wins for Bubba came back in 2014 and 2012. So they probably won't factor into our analysis all that much, but he was 5th in 2018, 12th in 2019. So there is recent success mixed in here for Bubba as well. The concern is that Bubba's play has taken a step back in the more recent sample. He struggled at Augusta in November. Since then, he has missed 3 of 5 cuts. He has gained on approach just once, and he's lost multiple strokes on approach twice. Bubba did play well at the match play event, for what that's worth. Could be worth something. And some of the events where he struggled were more accuracy level courses, whereas Augusta obviously is not that. Bubba does still rank 17th in the field in approach the past 50 rounds. The distance is still there. So for $9,500, I'm still willing to take some risks on Watson despite the bad, very recent form. This makes it a little bit harder to prioritize him, where if he were still in the form he was in October, I feel like he'd be priority at 95. Here, I think that he's a very good option, just not a priority. How are you viewing Bubba here at $9,500?
I looked at him. I'm not quite there. Bubba is actually someone who I base everything on stats and in the data, but Bubba's the one guy who I just kind of throw that out with, to be honest. I've heard that he played well at the match play, and you're not wrong that he won his group, but he went 1-0-2. I don't know, in his group. That in match play is very different. So I think that I'm going to write off a lot of what we saw at the match play, and again favor the longer term form. It's the recent iron play that is just kind of I guess maybe tepid is the right word. It's not terrible, but it's field average on, over a fairly large sample. And if you look back, he doesn't have that many huge pop weeks in his approach numbers, which you need to do to succeed, to win at Augusta or really any course. It's very rare for a golfer, and we won't know who actually gained the most strokes because I don't have access to that data. I know it's out there, but they keep it under wraps. So if he's not doing that and he's not capable of doing that currently, I don't really want to chase it. I think he's in play, but he's not really someone I want to prioritize. He definitely wouldn't be someone I would play in a cash game. not chasing like the form at Augusta. I don't see enough in the recent data. This is a very good example of kind of how to balance the two.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to view it. I think I might be a little bit higher on him than you are, based on the way you talked about it. But the overall takeaway is not a priority in this tier, but someone to consider. Just don't go too crazy, because the recent iron play is enough where the volatility on him went up. And I think that the ceiling is still there for Bubba, because he could very well snap back into the form he had in September, October, but the floor got lower, and that's worth considering for sure. So keep that in mind with Bubba Watson. I must have Bubba Wallace, but Bubba Watson, keep that in mind with him when you're in a very good range. Let's move into the current form discussion and check out golfers who are coming into Augusta striking the ball well. One of them is Paul Casey, not just striking the ball well on the PGA Tour, but also internationally. And we've got an expanding sample on Casey playing really good golf. $9,900. What are you seeing with him right now?
Yeah, he always seems to get a lot of talk around Masters time. We are not, we're guilty of that.
I was going to say, you're probably basing that off of me.
Well, I mean, look, we know Casey's got a somewhat of a storied history at Augusta, played here a ton. Recent form is more the talking point for him. I almost like flipped he and Westwood, like either, but we're talking about golfers for a field like this. We don't need to look at golfers who are having data. We generally can look at golfers who actually have good like course form and good current form. Wow. And so that's kind of where I am with Casey at 9,900. Enters with 4 straight top 10 finishes on the PGA Tour, including a 5th at the Players. Most recently, if you ignore the 1-1-1 showing at the WGC Match Play, he won in Dubai earlier this year. Was 12th at the Saudi International as well. So he has 6 straight top 12 finishes in his past 6 stroke play events. Then there's the Augusta form. 4 top 6 finishes, 8 top 25s in 14 tries, 10 total made cuts. I know he's your boy. We know that Paul Casey at his best he's one of those golfers who is in contention to lead a field in strokes gained tee to green because of what he does. Don't ever want to bank on Paul Casey to lead the field in strokes gained putting, but if he can lead in tee to green and just be fine with the putter, a little above average, like that'll be enough. So where are you with Paul Casey this week?
No, I think that he's probably number 1 in this tier for me. Is that bad?
It's not bad, no. I don't know if he's my straight number 1. And maybe for people not as familiar with the FanDuel salaries, would we want to put that like 10-2, 10-3, 10-1?
Yeah, so 10-2 is Hideki. You've got Scotty Scheffler, Sung J M, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Paul Casey, Cam Smith is also $9,900. You've got Jason Day at 98, who we have not mentioned yet. But
that's kind of like who we're comparing it to. I would sit if I can't go to 10-3. There's someone at 10-3 I adore. That's Daniel Berger. But if I'm not including him, I would go Scheffler, and then it's probably a coin flip between Casey and Smith, but maybe a tinge towards Smith.
Trying to decide if I want to do you want to do a Scotty Scheffler versus Paul Casey head-to-head? You can say no.
No, I'll do it because I don't care who actually does better. I have Scheffler a little higher, but okay. Just for anyone listening, Jim destroys me in head-to-heads on the show. He's up 12-4 this season.
Because you destroy me in every other aspect of the show.
I don't know what it is.
Somewhere.
Head-to-head bets I'm terrible at, and head-to-head FanDuel point bets I'm just apparently.
I think it's because you're better at gauging upside than I am.
Maybe.
And I would guess that skill set's better suited for most aspects. The upside angle is not as advantageous for head-to-heads, obviously.
All right, so I got Scheffler. You have Paul Casey, FanDuel points straight up.
Yes, correct. I am okay with that one. I think that Casey is a rock star here. Now, we were talking about this tier before, and one guy we did not discuss is Matthew Fitzpatrick. So let's talk about him because he's coming in hot, ranks 12th in Data Golf's adjusted total strokes gained over the past 12 months, and he is the lowest salaried guy in that top 12. Fitzpatrick has 4 straight top 11s stateside. That includes tough fields. He was 11th at the WGC Workday. He was 9th at the Players. Really tough fields there. The problem is that he's not long off the tee. Fitzpatrick ranks 68th in distance over the past 50 rounds. It didn't stop him from finishing 7th at Augusta back in 2016 when he was like 12 years old, but it's not a good thing by any means. And there are other guys around him. We talked about Cameron Smith before, who excel in similar areas but aren't as bad, I should say, as Fitzpatrick from a distance perspective. So I'm having a tough time getting on Fitzpatrick at 10-1, even with how good he has been. How about you?
Yeah, I think like Fitzpatrick also feels like someone who gets talked a lot about.
I'm assuming it's because of that one showing back in 2016. I think people remember that.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. And now like the form currently is better than any of his other, lead-ins to the Masters. We know that. And that's again, like the big sort of sticking point with looking just at 32nd in 2017. What does that tell us? Not as much as like what he's doing now necessarily. But I'm with you. I see the case for Fitzpatrick. A made cut is definitely helpful. It's never a bad thing to make a cut at a course like this, and in really any course, because you need made cuts. But the sheer upside, I don't really quite see it from a course fit standpoint, and I'm assuming the distance has a lot to do with the reason why. Just the one top 10, really the one top 20, even though he's one of the better golfers in the world. So I'm probably not in on Fitzpatrick this week because I have other options at similar price points.
I'd agree. I think it's the same thought process where I have other options. I have reason to believe that the upside may be muted as a result of the distance. I think that Webb would be a better play if I'm going to take that archetype there. So, and he's only $400 more. Like, that is a lot, but I think the gap in them is larger than $400, like from a talent perspective. So if I'm going to go that way, I'll go Webb. I think I'd probably go Cam Smith over Fitzpatrick as well. So that's why I wound up being not on him, even though I respect his game overall. Let's talk about some value golfers. Guys, below $9,000, we do like balance for this week, but I also think that there are some good value plays available, which is always kind of the trap. And that's the concern, because we do need, with so many guys making the cut, I know it's only 50 plus ties, but a percentage of viable, relevant golfers, it's going to be a large percentage of the field from a viable perspective. So we need good finishes, which means that I think that your emphasis on balance is good. However, there are good value plays. One of them could be Corey Connors, $8,900. What are you seeing with him coming into this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, having Connors, having a few other kind of standout value plays, not like elite value plays, but it makes it tempting to kind of have like almost a cascading sort of lineup where it's like one of the top end studs, someone in like the low 11s or high 10s, someone around 10K, someone like low 9s, someone upper 8, like just throughout. That's really appealing. Connors would fit that, but really Connors at 89, Corey Connors at 8,900 fits almost any lineup build. You can kind of, he can be sort of your low end of your balanced to sort of slingshot you back up toward 10K. He can be one of your 2 or 3 value golfers, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I think, 2 golfers below 9K is probably the max in terms of just strategy. So Connors to me is this, I think, has to be the best play below 9K because of his current form. He's finished top 20 in 4 of 6 stroke play events in 2021 with 5 made cuts. That includes 2 top 10 finishes, 14th last week at the Valero Texas Open. I don't really point to finishing positions and say like, oh, he's golfing well. But in this case, they are powered by good ball striking data and a lot better putting than what we typically see from Corey Connors. It seems like that is here to stay. It doesn't seem like it's a short-term sort of blip. It's been there long enough. Over the past 3 months, Connors ranked 7th in this field in Data Golf's True Strokes Gained approach metric. He is 13th in True Strokes Gained total, sandwiched between Dustin Johnson and Xander Schauffele. So pretty good company there. Again, it's a 3-month sample. That's not the most predictive sample, but it does kind of help see who's playing well currently. He's not a great putter historically, but again, it's trending up, and his huge negative is on POA. These are bent grass greens this week. And he has 3 starts at Augusta already. So he has some knowledge. Missed the cut in 2015, but like that's irrelevant, I think, right now. Was 10th back in November, has a 46th in 2019. Connors is golfing about as well as anyone. Value salary, I would imagine he's probably like the chalkiest value play that we get this week. But again, you can differentiate elsewhere. You can play Corey Connors, and if Corey Connors finishes 15th, and you just don't play Spieth and you play someone else, like you don't fade Connors just because he's popular. You can differentiate in other ways. I love Connors. What's your read on him?
So I think that if you like pull Fantasy Nationals putting data, you'll see that Connors ranks 80th on Bentgrass the past 100 rounds. I would say that this is a good place to plop in a caveat with the putting splits, where if you see overall putting gains, they're going to take a lot longer to manifest in the data when you're looking at splits, because maybe they haven't been to a lot of Bentgrass courses recently. That could mean that he's improved everywhere except for Bentgrass. But I think that the overall improvements we've seen from Connors and the overall steadiness we've seen is something I'm willing to believe in. So if you look at his data and see he's 80th in Bentgrass putting, that's going to scare you away. But if you look at Data Golf, they have adjusted strokes gained for each individual like split for putting over the past 12 months, which is a long, I mean, it's effectively 9 months because it's, lops off from March to June. But a 9-month sample, he's neutral as a putter. If you look at the past 6 months, he's actually a little bit above average. And these are good samples, and he's looking good. So I think the putting is less of a concern than it was previously. Ball striking should be good. And the around the green play, if I recall correctly, is also kind of getting better, or getting less disastrous, maybe is the better way to phrase that, where he's not torpedoing himself. I say that, he did just lose 3.6 around the green at the Valero, but it's been less bad recently than it was before. So I think that Connors makes a lot of sense. I feel no reason to nitpick him too much. You said that he's probably going to be the chalk. If he's the chalk, I could see myself maybe deviating because there are actually other options I like, but I don't think he'll be prohibitively popular is the way that I phrase it. And if that's the case, I'm totally good with Corey Connors.
Yeah, we don't really see anyone be like prohibitively popular at most majors. I think I made a note in this in my primer on numberFire. I think the max golfer is like around 32%. It's typically around like 41% in most courses, like most events. So again, you can kind of put Spieth maybe at like 35%, but these are reasonable. So I don't think fading anyone outright this week is necessary, and that's one of the biggest adjustments I've made over the years.
I'd agree. Let's talk about Jason Kochrack and a similar salary range to Connors. He's $8,600, and we've been talking about Kochrack's current form for a while now, but he just keeps on increasing the sample of him being good, which I think is fun. $8,600. Kochrack enters with 3 straight top 10 finishes in non-match play events. He has gained at least 5 tee to green in each of those events, and it's worth noting that Kochrack has gained a bunch of strokes putting recently, which likely means he's due for regression there, but it's not like those are completely out of the norm for Kochrack right now. He has actually gained on the greens in 9 of 21 measured events since the end of the COVID layoff. Again, a 9-month sample. Bentgrass is also the least bad surface for Kochrack, so I'm good buying into what he's been doing recently. He did miss the cut at Augusta back in November, but that was his first crack at the Masters. He was a debutant, which I know is weird because Kochrack's not a youngster, but that was his first time there. So I'm willing to forgive him for the missed cut. Think that seeing Augusta again a couple months later should be beneficial. So I am in on Kochrack 86. What about you?
You missed. It was his first Kochrack at Augusta.
That's bad.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm here for. I love Kochrack. Yeah. His putting is trending up long term. Again, like you can go to his Data Golf profile and just filter by putting, and you see like an upward trend. Data Golf just has a lot of good resources that makes it easy to break down golf analytically. So, you can see that. So it goes along with what you're saying, but I think he's one of the better value plays as well. He's one of the 5 golfers below 9K that I wrote up in my primer. I just feel like pretty solid. He, shot a 71-77 in November. So one good round, one not so good rounds. So like his big knock is like a lack of course knowledge, but he just played it. So I don't know. I think Kochrack is in the conversation for even a cash game play because of what he would get you access to, and what Kochrack does is play well tee to green, and that's much more reliable than someone who's super reliant on their putter. I'm
assuming we have Connors over Kochrack, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that. Let's move on to Bookmaker Odds, see what they are saying about this event. Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson, the co-favorites at FanDuel Sportsbook, they're both plus 950. Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas are 11-1, followed by Jon Rahm at 12-1. There's a big drop down to Rory McIlroy at 19-1, Patrick Cantlay 20-1, Xander Schauffele on an island by himself at 25-1. I'm sure Brandon is aware of that. Before we get to Brooks Koepka at 28-1, Colin Morikawa is 29-1. Followed by Patrick Reed at 32-1. Tony Finau and Victor Hovland round up the top group. They are 35-1. Do you want to know with Brooks, because we have not mentioned him yet, he had knee surgery because he dislocated his kneecap and popped it back into place, which was the most gross thing I've read this entire week. So there's a reason his odds are a bit longer. You know, he says he's there to win, so I tend to take Brooks at his word, but coming off of surgery, generally not great.
Well, you're the narrative guy between the two of us.
There's no gross kneecap narrative.
How do you balance coming off surgery, dislocated kneecap,
and engagement?
Just got engaged narrative. How do you balance those two?
I think that the gross kneecap narrative nullifies everything. Like he could have had, like, if his fiance had just had like sextuplets. Like that would be the new dad narrative times 6. I think I actually don't know what that one is, but
does it get multiplied?
Yeah.
Oh,
if you have twins, it's double. Like you win by you double or you have half the strokes the rest of the field. That's how it works. It's math. But even if like they had triplets recently, it wouldn't matter because the gross kneecap narrative almost made me vomit when I read it. So he's off the books. I think that like you could actually make a case for Brooks Koepka in reality, but in my mind, I will vomit every time I think about him for at least 6 days.
And did we talk about Rahm on the show, or was that before the show?
I don't recall. Oh, I think it was on the show. I don't know. My computer is freaking out, so I actually blacked out.
I'm still. In case we didn't, Jon Rahm. I think we did now. Yeah, because I was camping.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Either way, I loved Rahm. I was a little hesitant. Now I'm like back in on Rahm. I think he's a great play on FanDuel and possibly even at FanDuel Sportsbook 12-1. You haven't asked me about movement, but he's notable for one reason. So did you ask me a question, or did you just kind of talk about Brooks?
No, I was talking about Brooks because I was grossed out by his knee. Anyway, let's consider popularity. Let's consider salaries. Let's consider everything. Who is your favorite golfer in the field for this week?
DJ.
Even after considering popularity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, the popularity is going to be somewhat capped from what we typically see. He was the chalkiest golfer in November at 31.1% rostered on FanDuel. He won. Again, anyone who doesn't like to look at popularity and say, well, doesn't matter if he's on 100% of lineups. If he wins, you have to have him. And yes, that's the case. But I would say finding ways to differentiate is key. The optimal lineup, which DJ obviously was in, included Dylan Fratelli at 1.6% rostered, and Sungjae Im at 5.4%, Webb Simpson 12.5%. These are low numbers for sort of balancing things out. So I don't think any golfer is going to be so popular that I have to avoid. So for that reason, it's going to be DJ, who's the best golfer in the world and who at his peak is the best golfer in the world, even if other golfers are at their peak, to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that DJ, for a cash game, I think that there is value to going balanced in a cash game, maybe just foregoing the top of the pool. But I think what I would do is go Dustin Johnson and then balance the rest of the way for a cash game build. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I'm a little, I'm more open to, digging into the 8K range for one golfer in my, which it sounds so scared to do, but historically I just like to be really balanced and not be relying on value plays. especially at a tough course like this in a tough field. So I think that DJ is pretty much a cash game lock for me.
Yeah, I think that I'd agree with that as well. And probably going to be, like, if I have a single entry tournament lineup, I think DJ deserves to be in that for sure. Let's talk about what you've seen out of past optimals here, because you were talking about that a bit. And we talked about balance. Is that going to be your default roster construction for this week?
So what's really interesting is that I have three optimals from the past 3 Masters. Before that, FanDuel was a different format, so I don't really want to include that at all.
Oh yeah, the first 2 rounds versus final 2 rounds. Yeah, good times.
Yeah, it's okay. So we have 18 golfers, 6 each from these 3 lineups. Only one golfer had a salary below 8,000. That was Dylan Fratelli. Back in November, it's 7,600. So anyone who's thinking about, well, I can roster DJ and Bryson if I just take a shot on one $7,000 golfer. Sure, you can make it work. I would assume that's probably what you need to do. But those golfers are down there for a reason. Their upside is low. Their cut odds are low based on whether you would pull it from a sports book or simulate it out. And so I think that it's really important that, yes, the top of the field has a lot of win equity, but the bottom of the field has basically none. And no matter what week it is, you have to have the winner in your lineup for success in a tournament. By rostering someone in the 7K range, you're effectively saying, I'm giving myself 5 chances to hit a winner instead of 6, which is very confident, and I don't think that's very optimal. So what I will say is that somewhat balance is the right way to go, but that does not mean cutting off the top, the 11K and above. That's not what you have to do. It's just not digging too far down, I think, is the way that balance works this week. And of note, there's been $60,000 for each of the past 3 optimals, which is 2 of them spent exactly $60,000 last in November. It was 59.9. There's not a whole lot of wasted salary here. So there's a little room for error. And that also speaks to the fact that value plays don't overperform to the degree where you can leave a bunch of salary on the table or rely too heavily on value golfers. It's not the week to do that. Just be very careful. Don't get drawn in. At the lineups you can build with one bad golfer in your lineup, quote unquote bad, they're playing in the Masters, but just really, really think long and hard about, punting with even one of your golfers this week.
Right. And by punting, you mean someone who's totally not viable, correct?
Yes. Okay.
Because I think that Ryan Palmer's.
Oh, I love Ryan Palmer.
Yeah, he's not going to win, but I think that he is a viable golfer. That's the way that I'd phrase that.
Yes. Hudson Swafford, 7,600, Charles Schwartzel, you got to cut off basically 70. I'll say 78 and below. No, I'm just ready for
because you had to get Lonzo Griffin in there. Lonzo Griffin at 79. You had to make sure he was higher. You're right. I agree.
Yeah. So, but again, historically, you don't see value golfers pop in majors because they got to fend off so many elite golfers that probability wise, you're not going to see those guys score enough fantasy points to make an optimal lineup. Or you don't need the optimal lineup, but again, you should be striving for the highest score you can get. And the tougher the field gets, the less likely it is that these value guys are worth it. So just keep that in mind.
I think that the way you phrased it earlier is correct, where you want to give yourself as many cracks at identifying the winner as possible. Let's say you have 3 lineups and you use a punt play in each of them. That means you're cutting it down to 15 slots at identifying the winner as opposed to 18. And I think that the more lines you do, the more difficult that becomes. So making sure you have viable plays is always a key for sure. And that to me does lend itself more towards a balanced roster, which will be part of the motivation for what we talk about in my player picks as well. Which golfers' odds have shifted most noticeably? Let's set the cutoff here being Thursday, Friday, because Masters odds have been up forever. But FanDuel salaries came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. So let's look from Thursday/Friday on. Whose odds have shifted noticeably in that time?
So I have a few notes. I won't read every name, but I might just because they're interesting and it's the Masters, so it's whatever. But I would say the thing that jumped out to me most interesting is I see two golfers from, I think it was Friday morning. I pulled these either Thursday evening or Friday morning, and compared them to like Monday afternoon. Two golfers have not had their odds move. It's Jordan Spieth, he's stuck at 11-1, and Jon Rahm, who's stuck at 12-1. So I think that's very telling because that means everyone else shifted to some degree. Only 5 golfers' odds have shortened in that span. Matt Wallace from 150 to 120. Paul Casey, your boy, 41 to 35. Patrick Cantlay, also your boy, 22 to 20. Scotty Scheffler and Adam Scott moved 1 from 41 to 40 and 50 to 49 respectively. So not a whole lot of golfers' odds are getting better, which is kind of what you'd expect because of the way things were. So the biggest fallers, whose odds are still at least 100 to 1 or better, we have Bubba, not Wallace, but Bubba Watson.
I do have my Bubba Wallace Funko Pop over here, though. We can consult him about what he thinks about the Masters.
And where'd you get that?
I got it from winning the bobble hat, or no, not the bobble hat, the
win picks.
Win picks, yeah.
So Bubba Watson from 41 to 85, huge move. Tyrrell Hatton 33 to 47. Rory McIlroy 14 to 19. Jason Day 45 to 60. I know these are like out of order, but it's percentage wise. I just pulled them that way. Colin Morikawa 22 to 29. Tony Finau 27 to 35. Same for Victor Hovland. And Xander Schauffele 20 to 25.
Did you lock your Xander bet in, or are you good to go at the longer number?
I knew it was going to lengthen, so I just wanted to wait as long as possible. Xander getting big disrespect.
You read the book well. Okay, good. I wanted to ask you about Adam Scott because he did shorten a bit, whereas most people were falling. I think that's noteworthy. We have not talked about Scott, despite the fact we talked a lot about that tier. $9,600, good distance guy. He's had some interesting performances recently. Are you in on Adam Scott in that good tier in the mid to high 9,000s?
So he's 9,600. I'm not particularly in on him. I'm not particularly out on him, which I know is a little wishy-washy. But I don't love his bent grass putting. Good in a lot of Augusta form, obviously, with the win. The more recent ball striking data is a little concerning to me, specifically the off the tee play. That is mostly from not hitting fairways. At the end of the day, I'm probably going to play some Adam Scott because he just knows the course well, and he is someone who can kind of turn it on at any time. He's just that good. So I would say if we look at 9,600 and below, so Adam Scott, Joaquin Niemann, Bubba Watson, Sergio Garcia, Harris English, Louis Oosthuizen in like that range. This could be a donkey move, but I like Joaquin Niemann.
I do too.
I should probably prefer Adam Scott. I should probably prefer Adam Scott. And I like Louis at 93. He's one of the few golfers in like the low 9,000 range I actually like. But Scott would probably be third between like, I would say 91 and 96 for me.
I think I'd probably put him a little bit higher, probably right behind Niemann, I guess. But, it's not a huge difference. So
I already feel like, Adam Scott is like 10th after Thursday.
Why did we use Joaquin Niemann over Adam Scott?
Yeah.
Like, that's the question we're going to ask on Friday, maybe Thursday.
Yeah, it feels like that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Which lower salaried golfers have odds stand out to you?
I mean, there's not a lot. Sergio Garcia is 49 to 1. He's 9,400. He's the only golfer with a salary of 9,500 or lower with win odds of at least 85 or shorter than 85 to 1. So it's Bubba Watson at 85 to 1 and 9,500. Louis Oosthuizen as well as Zalatoris, both 90 to 1 in the low 9K range. Abraham Answer, Corey Connors, both 95 to 1. Justin Rose, Max Homa, Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel, 100 to 1. The standout there would be Horschel because he's 8,200. The other guys are just above 9K.
So with Garcia, I'm assuming that the odds are shorter because he's a recent Masters winner. Is he someone who's the current form is not bad either,
right.
But is he someone who does anything for you at $9,400?
He's kind of like he's been one of my banes because I've been putting a lot more of an emphasis on putting because I don't think it's completely random. And if you just dig back through his if you look at his long-term stats, I should say, it ain't great. We know that. He's putting with his eyes closed, which apparently he's been doing for a long time, but it just doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence. And then if you look back at his actual strokes gained putting numbers, very, very rarely is it green. So he basically has to have the tee to green play on point, and if he doesn't, he's not going to succeed as a fantasy play at 9,400. So I'm probably not there with Garcia this week.
Yeah, $9,400 is not a dud range, so it's tough if there's a known negative in the strokes gained data. Like, I know we don't get it for Augusta, but like if we know they're going to potentially lose strokes on the green, that's tough. So I agree. Not someone who's super high on my list. Weather for this week, we're recording Monday instead of Tuesday, so please note that the weather info will be less reliable this week than usual, but on Thursday, wind speeds will start off around 5 miles per hour, and then they'll increase to around 12 miles per hour for the afternoon. So that's an advantage for those teeing off early Thursday, and then there will be some rain overnight Thursday, which is likely to stick around for most of the day Friday, though the rain odds go down for the afternoon. Winds will be between 5 and 9 miles per hour for the entire day Friday. So it does look like there is an advantage for those teeing off early Thursday. I would check back on that on Wednesday, but there might be some value in considering tee times this week. The rain does roll out on Saturday. There is a chance for more rain on Sunday, but again, that's almost a week from today. So the wind looks pretty calm. But what I would say is, as of right now, I would give a bump up to those teeing off early Thursday. Again, it's going to change a lot between now and Thursday, so check back Wednesday. But I think that it's a good week to check back because there is potentially an angle here to get a wind advantage. Let's move now to our player picks, going tier by tier, checking out our favorite plays on FanDuel.com for the Masters. Brandon, who stands out to you on FanDuel for this week?
I think we need to just talk quickly about our favorite play is Dustin Johnson, right?
Yes.
Everything considered, DJ is the guy we would most want to play.
Agreed.
Where are you with Bryson?
I know that's very stupid to be on Bryson. I know it's stupid, but that's where I'm at.
Because I'm terrified of I'm not actively trying to fade any golfer this week. By nature, I will fade golfers because I won't be playing every golfer.
You can't use everyone. Yeah.
So I'm terrified of being underweight on Bryson.
Is he Derrick Henry of the Masters? Sorry, not to, I forgot what week 6. Let's see here. Is he Tyreek Hill of the Masters?
I think it's terrifying to fade Bryson. Actively. Again, I'm going to play Bryson, but realistically, I'm not prioritizing him over DJ. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to at least talk about those two because what we're doing is talking about somewhat lower salary golfers. Although I think you're talking, no, never mind. I'm going to talk about Xander.
Okay.
I know. I thought it was important that we didn't not really talk about Bryson at all. So
agreed.
I like Xander at 11-3. I love DJ's number one process play. I think Bryson's number 2. I think Spieth might be number 3 at the salary. I think it gets really muddy and opaque from there. We have Brooks at 11-6 coming off the knee surgery and with the engagement. So I don't know how, again, you said that doesn't cancel out. So it's more negative than positive. Rory at 11-4.
It totally nullifies the engagement. The engagement is off because of the kneecap.
Rory at 11-4, should probably be forgotten. We glossed over Patrick Cantlay and Colin Morikawa right around 11,000. They have recent wins. Feels like Morikawa has 50 recent wins. I think lost in the shuffle is Xander Schauffele. We've seen it in his odds at 20-1, which I think we're finally back to more appropriate. Now 25-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. He's failed to convert on a lot of his close calls in the past few months, but his past year adjusted strokes gained data is just as good as Justin Thomas, just as good as Bryson's, according to my database, which accounts for field strength and recency. Data Golf sees it pretty similarly too, so it's not just I'm not juking the stats for Xander. I think maybe the love for Xander is a little like worn off. I could be wrong on that, but I don't expect him to be prohibitively popular or anything like that. He has it was T17 in November, runner-up in 2019. Just like if I hid the names in my spreadsheet and saw this data and saw that this guy was 11-3 and he's every bit as good as the guys at 11-7 and above, I'd say just give me this guy at 11-3. That happens to be Xander. So I'm trying to take the narrative out of it, look just at the data, and I think a lot is pointing to Xander once again.
Well, one guy you mentioned there as Xander being on the level of that guy as a compliment, a guy we have not discussed yet, and a guy who I think is one of the better golfers in this field is Justin Thomas. So I want to talk about Justin Thomas here because we got DJ, who just wore the green jacket in November. We got Spieth coming off a win. We got Bryson DeChambeau with a recent win and the monster distance and being a favorite. I'm kind of expecting Justin Thomas to fly a bit under the radar, and I don't think he should. Thomas is not the longest golfer in the field, but he's not losing ground there. He is 25th in distance the past 50 rounds, and he excels everywhere else. He is first in this field in approach, 5th around the green, 28th in bentgrass putting, and he's improved at Augusta each year. He went from 39th in 2016 to finishing 4th back in November. The form has held steady since then. He has gained at least 6.5 strokes on approach alone in 3 of the past 5 events, and that does include his win at the Players. So if I get a read that the Players win will boost the popularity for Thomas dramatically, then I will deviate because this is partly a popularity-based play. John Rahm would be the pivot for me over JT if JT winds up being very popular. But for right now, I think that Thomas grades out perfectly. You're laughing. Does that mean he's getting a lot of tags on FanShare?
I went to FanShare. This is the first I'm looking at it. But it's updated Wednesday, March 31st. Maybe it's not.
Oh, okay, cool. So
okay. All right. Because he was up there. But Spieth has a bunch of tags, so I don't know. DJ sentiment's down, so I don't know. Maybe never mind. Maybe it's too early to tell. I would say there's going to be so much Masters coverage. Consume as much as you can and see who people are talking about and see who people are just not talking about, because some of these studs are going to go overlooked. Again, I think that's going to be Xander. I would definitely say that JT is going to be more popular than Xander. Not to say that JT is going to be so popular. I think my read on JT is that it'll be more popular than what you're thinking. But look, anyone's in play. Maybe it's best if we talk about, is there any golfer at we'll say 10-9, so Spieth and above, you know for sure you have no interest in playing? Because there's only one for me, and it's Rory.
Probably not going to use Rory. I'm probably not going to use Cantlay. Just realistically. Probably not going to use Brooks because of the kneecap thing. Probably not going to use Morikawa. Although, I know I can get burned by not using Morikawa, but realistically, based on the way that I play, I'm not going to get there.
And just from a course fit perspective, he kind of is the least of the...
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Those are the names. So those probably mean those are the names that most people will not want to play or just not prioritize. So if you build a Cantlay Morikawa lineup and you just chalky everywhere else, that might be all it takes. So again, this is the annoying part of process versus game theory.
Yeah. Okay. Who else stands out to you in this upper tier on FanDuel?
Daniel Berger at 10,300. In majors, I always love this sort of mid-range, and we get that with Berger. 10-3 is a very, very good salary for Daniel Berger. He's in the 91st percentile in adjusted strokes gained approach over the past year in my database. 81st percentile off the tee. Has positive putting splits on bent grass. Didn't qualify in 2020, unfortunately. So he hasn't played here since 2018, but actually has 12 full rounds under his belt with finishes of 10th, 27th, and 32nd. He's substantially better now than he was for any of those. So I think Berger at 10-3 fits every type of lineup. I think he might be cost-wise my favorite play outside of DJ.
I think he makes a ton of sense if you're there. I would say that Berger is not someone for whom I'd alter my roster construction, but if I'm there, I'll do it. I think that's where I'm at. The reason that I wouldn't quite alter my roster construction is I like Tony Finau quite a bit more, and Finau is $400 more, which, again, that is a lot for this field where you need every dollar. However, I think that, again, the gap between them should be more than $400 because Finau did miss a cut at the Valero Texas Open, but gained 3.4 in approach there and 2.8 around the green in 2 rounds. Just terrible off the tee, and that was not an event that set up well for his strengths, but Augusta is, and he's shown that in the past. He finished 10th as a debutant back in 2018. He was 5th in 2019. Finau ranks 9th in distance, 7th in approach, 20th around the green, 30th in bent grass putting, so he's actually a bit more well-rounded than you might think based on the perception of Tony Finau. So if I have him as my second golfer, it gets me to a relatively balanced lineup. Like if I go, hypothetically, based on my player picks, if I go JT Finau, I can go to 1 Ryan Palmer and then be living in the mid to high 9,000 range. I think that's pretty attractive. So I think Finau is my number 2 is really fun for this week. What are your thoughts on Tony Finau?
Yeah, I have like a similar read with how I'm probably going to construct my lineups. Although Xander at 600 more might be the guy I try to get to, even if it means I have to go down a little bit more, just because I have the gap between Xander and Finau is, bigger. But yeah, I mean, Finau fits Augusta, has done well at Augusta, is just great. He's a great golfer, tee to green, and his biggest weakness of driving accuracy is mitigated this week. So Finau's a great play. It's just almost everyone's a great play at the top.
Yep. So let's move into the mid-range, and it's a good range. So these are the best of the best, the guys we like the most in a loaded tier. When we make that caveat, Brandon, who stands out to you most in this very good tier?
I'm going to stick with Cameron Smith at 9,900. He is playing his best golf in his career, and I think that needs to be factored over everything else. He has finished top 20 in 3 straight events, which were the Genesis, the WGC Workday, and the Players. He has above average irons in the 64th percentile. He is 75th percentile or better in both of the short game stats. So strokes gained around the green, strokes gained putting in my database. After a runner-up in November at the Masters, made all 4 cuts here. You talked about his course form already. 2 top 5s. I think a lot lines up for Cam Smith to be, comfortably in the top 20. That's a very bold claim because even those top 20 odds are for most golfers fairly long, but just with what he does, I think he's kind of a standout play in this range.
I'm warming up to him more. I was high enough on him before, but I think I'm getting a little bit higher. So I think that Smith grades out pretty well. I think that he's a very logical play. I do still have Paul Casey ranked higher. He's my favorite play in the mid-range here. The ball striking should be really good, and I think that he's good enough on bent grass to not erase the gains he has elsewhere. Casey ranks 13th in this field in distance and 12th in approach. It's going to make him competitive, and we saw Casey putting up good numbers internationally earlier this winter. He has carried that stateside with 4 straight top 10s to open the year. He has gained at least 4.4 in approach in 3 of those 4 events. The around the green play has been good too, which is that's not regular for him, which could mean he'll regress. So keep that in mind. But best putting surface for Casey is bent grass. He's gotten off to these really slow / bad starts in Augusta recently, but he was top 6 3 straight times in 2015 to 2017. He has sometimes been able to erase those really bad starts with amazing Sundays. So the form is better now for Casey than it was entering November, and he finished 38th then. I'm going to buy high on Casey at $9,900. We have Casey versus Scheffler as a bet, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any other thoughts for you on Paul Casey before we move on?
No, I mean, the form's good. Lots of course form, so I think we're good. Okay,
so your second player pick is Louis Westhazen. And I want to ask you first about Will Zalatoris. He's $9,200. Is the debutante angle what puts you off of Zalatoris? I thought he was kind of interesting at $9,200. Is it just because he hasn't played here?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of cross off guys.
Okay.
Statistically, he should fit. But it's kind of a tall order. Although he has kind of bucked the trend pretty much everywhere. So I don't dislike him, but I kind of just by default don't look at guys who
That's fair.
I kind of even need like at least 2 starts to kind of really narrow things down, but that's just probably my personal preference.
Okay, talk to me about West Hazen then.
I like him because the salary is like getting into that value range of 9,300. He's been lingering a good bit lately. Was 11th at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, 6th at the WGC Workday, 41st at the Players, which not great, but it's a tough field. Has a lot of experience at Augusta. Does have just one finish better than 10th, but does have 6 top 25s in 12 tries. So for that salary, if you give me like a top 20, you're in the mix still. He's a positive bentgrass putter. Should gain some distance on the field, maybe not a ton, but should gain some. So I think like top 25, top 20. Again, I'm not saying he's more likely to finish top 20 than anything else, but I think that the path for him to do so is pretty clear.
Do you want to add a West Hazen versus Zalatoris bet?
Oh boy, I don't want to go against Will Z, but I'll do it for the show.
Okay. Leaning into the narrative of fading golfers in their debut, Tony Finau top 10 in his debut. Why not Willie Z up next? My second mid-salary play is Joaquin Niemann, $9,600. We've been talking for a while about Niemann getting better on non-bentgrass surfaces, but he's actually back on his best surface now, which is really fun. If the overall putting's getting better, you would think the bentgrass numbers should stay very good. He ranks 24th on bentgrass, which includes his early career numbers, so he's good on the surface, and the ball striking should be very good too. He ranks 5th in distance, 19th in approach. He was terrible around the green at the Honda, but he had been trending up before that. So it looks like Niemann's overall short game is getting better, which is super encouraging given how good he is as a ball striker. He has never made the cut at the Masters, did play here back in 2018, so he's at least seen the course. It's been a while, but I think you could count the course history as a negative for Niemann. But even after doing so, I think that he's a fun, high upside play at $9,600. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Niemann, all things considered, for this week?
I like him. Again, that 2018 missed cut was when he was an amateur. Had to withdraw because of a positive COVID test in November, so he didn't get to play it recently. But again, it hasn't fully it's not his debut here, and we know what Niemann is now, and it's one of the best tee to green players in the world and an improving putter. So I like him. Again, I'm probably going to be a donkey to play him over Adam Scott at the same salary. So I might change that by Thursday, but I think Niemann himself makes a lot of sense. So that much I can say. You
could just do the Brandon. Duplicate the lineup, once with Scott, once with Niemann, and go from there. Pull a Brandon. Yeah. Let's move down to the value plays. Again, I think these are actually pretty good this week. So who are you looking at here below $9,000?
I'm going to stick with Corey Connors because I think he makes a lot of sense at 8,900. The current form's so good. So I think that makes him a priority play in this range. I don't think he'll go overlooked at this salary because of how well he's played, but it does not mean that you have to fade him. You can differentiate in other ways. He is in the 88th percentile in adjusted strokes gained off the tee, in 93rd percentile in adjusted strokes gained approach in my database once you wait for field strength and recency. Coming off 2 straight top 10s in tough fields, was 10th here in November. Has played here 3 times. I think that sets up for one of the easiest cases to be made for a value golfer.
And he is also my favorite guy down here. So I think that Corey Connors, the top value play on FanDuel for this week. My favorite low salary guy outside of him is Jason Kochrack. We talked about the good finishes for Kochrack before, but they're backed up by good stats, which is why I like him quite a bit, $8,600. Kochrack, 19th in distance, 27th in approach, and he's also up to 42nd in bentgrass putting, which is encouraging. There are still some holes in the short game for Kochrack, so it's not like he's a surefire stud, but with such a large percentage of the viable field making the cut, I can actually afford to take some risks here. So I'm okay with that, especially when it comes with upside. And it seems like Kochrack has that. I got to find guys who can get me top 20s, top 10s, top 15s. I think Kochrack is one of the guys in that discussion. Brandon, any final thoughts for you on Kochrack?
No, I think we covered it. He's one of our favorites down here.
All righty. Who else for you fits the bill under $9,000 on FanDuel for this week?
Doesn't quite fit what I'm looking for at Augusta, but fits from just a sheer talent standpoint. That's Billy Horschel at 8,200. You will have to overlook distance to like Horschel because he's in the 38th percentile there against this field. over the past 100 rounds on the PGA Tour, but is 92nd percentile in putting on bent grass. That's not been enough for him to succeed at Augusta a lot. 4 made cuts in 6 starts, but just one top 30. Has had the high-end finishes lately, though, which is very encouraging and does outweigh the Augusta form for me. Was 7th at the Sony Open, 2nd at the WGC Workday, won the match play. And if you kind of throw in like the subjective stuff, he's not going to be thrown off by playing at Augusta. Like he'll play his golf, and right now his golf is pretty good. So I think 8,200 Horschel is a in play at a value play.
Yeah, I think that Horschel is interesting for sure. I don't know if I'm super into him. I prefer Ryan Palmer. So let's have a Ryan Palmer, $8,000, $200 less than Horschel. The putting is probably going to be bad, but I do like the rest that he has to offer. Palmer just one missed cut in the past 17 events, and in that same time, 5 top 10s, not bad. And he's done it with distance, but the approach has also been solid. He has gained at least 4 in approach 5 times and 2 in approach 9 times in that span. And the putting has been getting better. So kind of in similar mold to Corey Connors and Joaquin Niemann, he's avoiding total disasters for the most part. He did lose 6 at the WGC Workday and 4.4 at the St. Jude, but he has managed to gain at times too. So it's not similar to Garcia before where you were saying, he's going to lose. Palmer at least occasionally does gain on the greens. So that's, I think, encouraging. $8,000, I just kind of to hope he sinks some putts. What are your thoughts on Ryan Palmer for this week?
Love Ryan Palmer. Would have been down here. Would have been one of my picks if you didn't get to the sheet first. Like all over form at Augusta, but the recent form, the course fit is there. So Palmer at 8,000, I think would fit like what I would consider my optimal build this week. So it's not quite full balance, but I said like that cascading sort of thing. He's part of that.
I agree. I think that's a good way to view it, where if I use him, I can get more guys in the high 9,000 range, and I would like to do that for this week. Let's finish up with our picks to win for this week. Again, based on the odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook, we each get 2 picks based on those odds to win at the Masters. So, Brandon, who do you have winning the green jacket this week?
I'm not really going to take too many long shots because it's just not how it works. I have a name at the top who I keep coming back to, and I was a little uncertain, but it's going to be Jon Rahm at 12-1.
Okay. Do you want to do your second one now or no?
It's going to be Xander at 25-1.
I was considering Xander.
He's my model's favorite bet.
Yeah, I don't want to double up, so I'm not going to go Xander. I probably would have had you not, but of course you would go Xander. I am going to go someone who has a similar narrative around him right now. His lack of wins is more long-standing than Xander's, though. But I think that's being over-accounted for in his odds. So I'm going to go Tony Finau, 35-1. I think that you can laugh at that because, Finau can't close. But the sportsbook odds are accounting for that.
Yeah, I think we see that with Xander, too.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think that with Xander, it's a little bit more outrageous that that's being taken into account. But whatever. Okay, so I have Finau for 1.
It's tough.
My second. What?
It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Because the odds are pretty sharp here. I think that Rahm was a very good pick, and I commend you for taking that. I'm going to go Justin Thomas, 11-1. It's not a great number, but I think that he has what I need to get it done. And I think so. Like from a value perspective, Justin Thomas is not a great value, but I think that I like what I see there. So I'll go Thomas and Finau. You have Rahm and Xander as our picks to win for this weekend.
Yeah, and if anyone's like, why am I picking Rahm to win instead of DJ or something? Rahm is probably one of my favorite differentiation plays, assuming that he does go a little bit under the radar, because DJ, Bryson, Spieth should be the 3 chalk from everything. So Rahm would be one of my favorite ways to differentiate anyway.
And that's kind of why I'm on JT too, is assuming that those guys get a lot of interest. So same thought process leading us to 2 very interesting guys for this week. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we close up shop for today and send people off to fill out their lineups?
One of our longer pods, but I think we covered a lot. And again, you gotta figure out what kind of risk tolerance you have, and if that means fading, like not fading, but like if you're building 5 lineups and you don't have any Bryson or DJ, like, are you okay with that? That's kind of what it comes down to for me this week.
Yep, it's going to be a nerve-wracking week for sure. I got to make sure Colin Morikawa doesn't do Colin Morikawa things and just totally skewer me for not going there. But we'll see how things play out. That is all that we have for today. But do not forget, Brandon is back with you on Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, to break down what his sheets are saying. It's a Q&A over the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. Make sure you're subscribed. They're live at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll be live with MLB DFS immediately after that. So just stick around after Brandon's done, getting you set for everything on Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe there. Also check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. The MLB DFS Solo Shot is back. We also have UFC podcast this week from Austin Swaim. NASCAR is back. NBA, NHL from Tom Vecchio. So a lot of good things over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gdula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you for the Masters. Enjoy the golf. We'll talk to you once again in the very near future. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.